So now let's talk about the white hat in more depth. The white hat is all about information and facts. The white color stands for neutrality and innocence because it's acting a little bit like a computer. It just you ask it something and it gives you a response. But it cannot make up things or have intuitions and feelings. It's just responding to the questions you're asking with facts, right? So the white hat is concerned with what information do we have? What information do we still need? What is missing? What questions do we have to ask? It's all about gathering information, stating information, and just generally establishing what is known and also establishing what is not known. So how to use the white hat? One fun way to think about that is imagining being like Wikipedia. Someone types in a question and you just respond with the facts. Now, there's lots and lots of information out there, so it's very important that you really think about the question you're asking, because otherwise you'll just be overwhelmed with the amount of data that comes back. So for example, you could ask, give me your broad white hat thinking on unemployment. Or you may ask, give me your white hat thinking on school leavers 6 months after they've left school. You can see how that's a very, very different question and will yield very different answers. Now, the other thing to really pay attention to when using the white hat is to make sure you're just getting the facts. And it's okay to have uncertainty, but the uncertainty needs to be very clearly labeled so that everyone knows what is known and what is not known yet, or what checked facts and unchecked facts, right? So somebody might say, because of health concerns, more and more people are becoming vegan. And then you might say, is that just a conclusion or is this an actual fact? If the person says, well, it's a fact, I've got a study here, then you might say, well, show me the study. And you might read the study. You might find out that in the study says that alternative protein products, which vegans would eat, sales have risen 20% each year for the last 3 years. And a separate study asked that why people are turning vegan, and many people responded that they're doing so because of health concerns. Now, those are two facts that study exists and that the sales have risen, but it doesn't necessarily follow that more and more people are becoming vegan because they're doing it out of health concerns. That's already sort of a projection or conclusion based on the data. It doesn't seem completely unlikely, but we have to make sure that we label it that this is just a projection. There may or may not be additional research or other questions we may want to ask to make sure that this conclusion is really true. So with the white hat, you're acting like a scientist who collects specimens and then lays them out on a table for careful study. So under the white hat, it's okay to form a hypothesis about something and clearly label that, but a mere opinion on what is happening should not be allowed on the white hats. There are other hats that are better suited for that. Another important concept that follows from this is how to deal with likelihood. And one thing that's quite astonishing that I've learned from another book called Superforecasting is that language is incredibly imprecise when it comes to describing probabilities. The most stark example is probably the words on there's a serious possibility that such and such a thing will happen. There was an example in the U.S. intelligence community where somebody had said there's a serious possibility that Iran would attack Israel, and then someone went around and asked people what they thought that those words meant in terms of probability, putting a number on it. The astonishing thing was that the range of probabilities went from 20% probability to 80% probability, using the words a serious possibility, right? So you can see how using the words serious possibility doesn't actually really help. It may in fact create more confusion, or it may just create very, very different expectations for people. So the best thing to do when using probabilities is to use numbers, 20%, 30%, 70%, 60%, because it'll just give a much clearer picture to people what it is that you think is likely to happen, which percentage. Another important concept when dealing with the white hat is to be aware of the precision of the statements that are being made when wearing the white hat. So see if you can notice the difference in the following three statements. Number one, all the experts believe that the interest rates will fall by the end of the year. Number two, I talked to 4 experts and they all believe that the interest rates will fall by the end of the year. Number 3, I talked to Mr. Johnson, talked to Mrs. Smith, I talked to Mrs. Frank, and I talked to Mrs. Beeler, and they all believe that interest rates will fall by the end of the year. Can you notice how these maybe subtle differences may have a potentially large impact on the decisions that we take? One of the main values of the 6 thinking hats methods is the focus on a deliberate thinking mode. So let's look at how the white hat is very different from the red hat. The white hat is only concerned with facts, and you're specifically trying to find out the truth of the situation and all the data and information. The red hat is concerned with emotions, with hunches, with feelings. So under the white hat, you might say, we sold 450 products on average in the last 90 days in each store. And in a customer survey that we ran right after people exited the store, they said that they thought our product quality was average and that our price was too high. Under the red hat, you might say, we have a shitty product that is overpriced and the competition has a much better product and is eating away at our market share. You can see how both the white hat statement and the red hat statements are very important, but it's very important to differentiate them so that we can later go and check whether the red hunch may be true or not. And we do that by digging up facts using the white hat. So let's quickly summarize what we learned with the white hat. White stands for neutrality, and you're trying to give back information and facts. So maybe imagine like your Wikipedia. When somebody asks you something, you respond like the Wikipedia engine would respond to that question. Number 2 is to clearly distinguish between checked facts and unchecked facts. They can be checked later on. Number 3 is to use numbers whenever possible when dealing with likelihood. Number 4 is to clearly label anecdotes as such. And number 5 is to use precise language when making statements. I hope you enjoyed the white hat, and I'll see you in the video about the red hat.